If you've ever wanted to run an ultramarathon in New York City, you may be surprised to learn that you're not alone. You also may be surprised that there are many options, from 100-milers, FKT attempts around Manhattan Island, and a 37-mile race called the New York Roadrunners 60k. The New York Roadrunners 60k consists of 9 laps around Central Park. That's right, it's all done in Central Park. I ran this race in 2018, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with it, what it was like, what I didn't like, would I do it again? So let's jump right into it. What's up everybody and welcome to my channel. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about the New York Roadrunners 60k. And first things you may be wondering is, what do you get for finishing the 60k? What do you get for your efforts? And you know, true to the ultramarathon world, they kind of stick with the belt buckle theme, but they do put it on an actual medal. So it's a medal with a band with, at least for me, the date that the race was held, and it can be used in fact as a belt buckle. That's what I did, and I just left it with my other, race medals. And then you also get a race t-shirt, which is common for anything New York Roadrunners. That was the t-shirt for the year that I ran in 2018. Now, it might sound a little bit weird, but the New York Roadrunners 60k was actually my first official attempt at a marathon distance or beyond. I ran a marathon, basically in training for the 60k just on my own, running a 26.1 mile run, but it was a training run, and I actually had never officially run a marathon in my life before doing this race. The reason I chose to run it was simply because I had been wanting to get into the New York City Marathon. I hadn't got in via the lottery, and I didn't really do the 9+1 program yet to get into that race, so I just decided to go for the big one and go for the New York Roadrunners 60k. I personally finished in around 6 hours and 51 minutes, and I just have this picture of me as I was getting across the finish line. So it was about 11 minutes per mile, a little bit faster than 11 minutes per mile over the whole course, and then each 4-mile loop I spent about a minute or so refueling and eating some food and things like that at the table, because they had an actual fuel stand where they had soup, potatoes, things like that. So I'd spent time there each lap I came around the park. So it went pretty well, I'd say, for my first marathon / ultra marathon experience. So I'll dive into, some positives and negatives of what I think about the race overall. And again, like I said, is it something that I would do again? I will put the 2017 course map up there just so you can get a sense for the course itself. You can see some of the elevation maps and things like that, but keep in mind that the start and the finish the year that I ran, and I believe going forward, will be at 102nd Street. So 102nd Street is at the top, and you can see in my map from Strava when I ran the race kind of where my start and finish dots are. So keep that in mind. The actual map is from 2017 and is not up to date with the start and finish location, but the general loops and the elevation and everything like that are, still true to this day. So the first positive for the New York Roadrunners 60k is it's a relatively fast course. I'll put the times up for the top 3 finishers overall now from 2019, which was the last year that they ran the race. And, you can see here it's a pretty good pace for, a 37-mile run. And it's fairly competitive because, like I said, it's this pretty dedicated crowd that comes out, and, at least, the top half of the finishers are really into the ultra running scene, and they're really there to compete and, go for a fast run, even though it's 37 miles. The elevation gain is right around 1,000 feet, which isn't much for an ultramarathon, to be honest. I mean, most ultramarathons are much hillier, usually, going to touch some trails and things like that. So to have 1,000 feet of elevation gain total over 37 miles is a relatively flat course, and it's really just the rolling hills of Central Park, which can feel really tough when you're running, but, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very flat course and very fast if you really want to go out and race for this distance. The second kind of neat thing about this race is it's a very open course. Now, it's good and bad because, yes, there's not going to be too much separation from the general public that day, but, overall, everyone in Central Park is used to people running around all the time. They generally know how to get out of the way. Bikers are generally aware of people in the park, but there really are just like cones separating everybody who's racing versus, again, the public. So the reason I say it's nice is you can have family and friends come and see you. You're going to be doing laps around Central Park, so you're going to pass them many times. You're not going out into the woods somewhere where you wouldn't see your family as much. Lots of access to them if you want them to give you fuel. Lots of fun if you want them to join you for a lap. I had a lot of fun with it because I had club members that I, ran with before who would take turns doing a lap with me just to pass the time, and honestly, it made the race go really quick for as long as it was. So that's a really big plus, that it's a fairly open course. Family and friends picnic and things for the runners, cheer them on, give them food and everything like that, which people eat during an ultra marathon. So that was a really big plus and a fun experience to have people so close and able to join you and leave you throughout the whole day. Along the same lines, I kind of showed you where the start and the finish line is. You do that loop every 4 miles. So, if you can get away with about 40 minutes, 4 miles or so, whatever your pacing is, it could be less. You can get away with that amount of time without refueling. You can basically carry nothing on your body. You see people go out into these ultra trail races and they have packs and all these things. You really just need what you're wearing that day. So you can get away with pretty much the bare essentials on your body and just pick things up as you come around, again, adding to the speed of the race. This is essentially your fueling and med station along the way. Since you come through, it's about 5 miles for the first lap because we go all the way down, remember, to that southern tip of the park, and then when you cut across 72nd Street, it's about 4-mile loops from there. So you can pretty much get away with just leaving your gels here and going out and running without any equipment. So those are some of the real key positives about the race, or reasons that you would pick this particular ultra marathon, other than just living and being in New York City and wanting to run an ultra marathon. But now I just want to talk about some of the other things that, maybe would steer me away in the future. And the first thing is, the repetitiveness of the loops. For me, it was really great because, again, I had club members and things like that were joining me for portions of the race. But if that wasn't able to be organized or wasn't going to happen, I didn't have people with me. Maybe you're a solo runner, maybe you are coming from out of town, either out of state or somewhere far away. You may be a little bit lonely, and it's going to be difficult to just keep yourself occupied while you see the same hills and same parts of the course come around again and again. But then again, these trail races also can be pretty spread out over the course of the whole race. So, those are even more isolating at times out on the trails. So it's just something to keep in mind, again, if you're coming from something like racing in New York for the New York City Marathon, New York City Half Marathon. This is a very different environment and a very, alone experience out there on the course for the most part. And I think that's, part of, again, the ultra running scene is just finding everything within yourself to go out and race. But just keep that in mind and, be familiar with that feeling, in your training, because, that's what it is. That's a lot of the ultra marathon running out there. The other thing about it being this loop around Central Park is it's all pavement. You can't avoid the pavement. There is no alternative dirt trail or anything as if you're staying on the regulated course. So that's a lot of beating on your body. That's a lot of pounding. That's a lot of miles. I think I took something like 75,000 steps that day. So just think about how much you're going to be hitting the pavement over and over and over again. That's something that's different than, again, a lot of the other ultramarathons that venture out into the trails or at least some buffed out dirt paths. It's just a lot of wear and tear on the body. Now, again, along the lines of the wear and tear, I kind of said in the beginning, I believe this race does have a fairly large New York City crowd that's running. I don't necessarily know how many people are coming from even out of state or out of, the country. But the hardest thing is training. If you're living and breathing in Manhattan, you're going to do a lot of miles in your training, in the same way that you have a lot of pavement and concrete during the actual race is the same thing you're going to encounter when you go out for runs of 50, 60, 70 miles a week, which, there's people in New York City that run that amount of mileage all the time. But if you're not finding some kind of track, if you're not using the bridle path in Central Park to get some dirt, under your feet, and this is your first time venturing into that kind of a distance and maybe bumping up the mileage, you may end up getting some overuse injuries in your knees and ankles and things like that. So just keep that in mind, but it is hard in general in New York City to find some soft ground. It's just a lot of concrete and pavement. Now, what kind of tips and things do I have for you if you're considering running a race like this? Like I said, unfortunately, it was canceled in 2020, and actually I didn't know, but it was canceled in 2021. What can I tell you to get ready for the race? First things first, if you're new to ultramarathon running, I don't think it's a bad place to start. I mean, I did it, like I said, without even having run a marathon before in my life. But some of the key things that I learned in my training was definitely to learn how to fuel up, on your long runs. And when I say fuel up, I mean, actually eating, because you may do that or likely will do that on the course for race day. It includes things like I did cut up Nutella sandwiches into small triangles, ate those every so often when I was doing my long runs. Some people do drink, flattened, with the bubbles taken out, Coca-Cola for a caffeine boost throughout the race. So you just need to find, and you can look up some of the different fueling strategies that people use in these really long races, but you want to make sure your stomach gets used to that during your training. I think around mile 34 or something, or maybe mile 30, I did start to take a few sips of like my flattened Coca-Cola just for some caffeine boost. The biggest thing I can say too is just make sure you're doing other strength training. I did have some issues with my IT band throughout the final weeks of the training when I was really getting up in mileage, when my long runs were over 26 miles. So you just need to, again, be familiar with what you need to do to strengthen your hips and, the lateral muscles of your body, because if you don't, you're going to run into some injuries. And, that's the biggest thing I can say to you is just make sure you're getting really well-rounded workouts, because if you don't, the last thing you want is to be out by injury after all the work you put in the first 3/4 of the training block. So, would I run the New York Roadrunner 60K again? I think my gut reaction would be no, but that could change very easily. If I knew a bunch of my running club mates were going to do it, I'd probably join in with them if they asked me to. But the other difficult thing is just the timing. Again, with the New York City Marathon, I much prefer running the New York City Marathon just with the environment and the experience of that. I could do that every single year and still have a blast. So being so close to that, I have to be in a mindset, or have to desire basically, to run back-to-back marathons or ultramarathon after a marathon the week right after. So the timing is rough, and just being someone who's in New York and has the New York City Marathon available, that's pretty much the biggest roadblock to ever doing that particular race again. And I also just have other interest in the future of going out to different ultra marathons in the trails and things like that, and not just seeing Central Park come around over and over again. So that's everything that I have on the New York City, 60K. I hope that's helpful. If you do have any additional questions, definitely put them down in the comments below. And thank you again for making a suggestion to post this video. I honestly wouldn't have thought about it myself, but because of what you shared and what your interests were, I'm happy to share my experience and make this video on a day that I just had some extra time. So thanks again for watching, everybody. Definitely subscribe, like I said, if you haven't already, and if you could hit the like button, that would be a big help to me. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.